gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about B2B marketing lessons from AT&T's You Will campaign with the help of our special guest, CMO at Rokt, Doug Rozen.
Have you ever kept an eye on your home when you're not at home? Or gotten a phone call?
Hello. How was your day?
On your wrist?
Beautiful.
You will. And the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T.
Your true voice.
Doug, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Ian?
I am doing wonderful. This is a fun campaign. I'm really excited to dig in, as well as, getting into your marketing background as both a CEO and a CMO, which is super fun. So first question here, why the heck did you pick AT&T's You Will campaign?
Well, I've been a fan of advertising for many, many decades, and there's so many great campaigns. And I feel like the obligatory campaigns that people pick are the obvious ones. But I've been a long fan of what I call story building versus storytelling. Storytelling is all about forcing people to view. It's the old model of like, almost if you build it, you hope they came. And in 1993, when You Will was launched, it was easy to attract attention. You could do reach-based programs, and that was great. And most advertising is about storytelling. It's very transactional. But for me, story building is about drawing people in. It's about driving engagement, and it builds over time. So I just said one thing, you're creating this campaign. And if you go back to 1993 and when this came out, it was a foreign notion not to just be so reach focused and really try to foster this engagement and create something that is 13, 15 different episodes versus a one and done mentality. To me, this was the future of content marketing in 1993.
We're going to dig all into that here in a second. But zooming out, tell us about being CMO at Rokt.
Yeah, Rokt is the global leader in e-commerce. We enable companies to really unlock value by making each transaction relevant at the moment that matters most, when customers are buying. We call that the transaction moment. And together we have this machine learning powered relevance platform that has 11 years of AI, as well as scaled e-commerce network that powers 1 billion transactions across all verticals, and really, a complement to what retailers and anyone doing any type of commerce online is trying to look for.
Meredith, what the heck is AT&T's You Will campaign?
So it's a really cool campaign. So in 1993, AT&T launched these ads that basically predicted the future with really uncanny accuracy.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
They teased inventions that would let people talk to their doctor over video instead of going in person, getting driving directions on a screen in your car instead of having to carry a paper map, watching a movie on demand instead of having to buy or rent it from a store, which you'll notice these are all available today, and they seem like no big deal. But at the time, they were really futuristic. So the copy was like,
Have you ever paid a toll without slowing down? Bought concert tickets from a cash machine?
yeah, perfect.
You will. And the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T.
Which now it's like, oh, we have Easy Pass. You can do that easily today. So here's how AT&T did it, meaning how did they predict the future? And it's a really brilliant marketing play. So at the time, the company was actually really struggling. I thought this was so interesting. They were seeing their competitors like Sony and Panasonic quickly pulling ahead of them in new technologies, specifically related to video, music, computing. But the problem was that AT&T was working on all of these cool new tech tools, and they were working in partnership with Bell Labs. And there were tools for telemedicine, voicemail, video conferencing, security, and much more. But they just weren't ready to go to market yet. So their timing was really off, and it would have been way too expensive for the average consumer to afford at the time. So they saw their public image basically suffering, and their competitors were pulling ahead. And they scored low when it came to most likely to bring new technology to the lives of 18 to 34-year-olds. So basically, like, their competitors were like, we're coming up with these new tech tools for young, cool, people who are coming up as young professionals. So AT&T brand marketing made a play to rebuild their image. Glenn Kaiser, who had been VP of market research at AT&T at the time, said it was complicated because they were planning to air commercials about still in development applications. They're like, these things are coming, but they're not there yet, right? So they're like, we have to do this in a really smart way. But he said the goal of the campaign was to project a more relevant AT&T to the youth demographic and build enthusiasm for what we had in the pipeline. So for the ads, they picked applications in technologies that seemed realistic and would also appeal to consumers. So they had many, many more that they could have included in the ad. And their tagline was, "You will." But there was also the second tagline that they thought was really cool, which was "More than you imagine and sooner than you think." So they worked with this agency, NW Ayer & Son. And this is cool. The ads were voiced by Tom Selleck, but originally it was Robin Williams. Hello! Ah! And they decided that they weren't performing as well. I really want to find these original ads with Robin Williams. Like, I can only imagine. And so they ended up being voiced by Tom Selleck. And they said the drama in his voice was sort of what struck well with consumers.
Guns don't work on Sunday.
So the campaign consisted of obviously TV commercials. There were some print ads and the internet's first banner ad. And this is crazy. It had a 44% click-through rate and led to a You Will microsite. And all it said was, have you ever clicked your mouse right here? You will. Wow. And so it got so many people to click on it. It's like almost half of every person who saw it clicked on it. And so the thing that was interesting was that though Glenn Kaiser said that with all that the ads promised, right? These are big promises. It sort of raised the question on whether they could follow through and deliver on the promise. He said, it's one thing to make a great commercial, but it's quite another to make a great promise and keep it. And in the end, AT&T did fall short. All their competitors sort of came through, but there was a lot sort of working against them. One, it was not really commercially viable at the time. And they ended up actually splitting with Bell Labs. So after that, they ended up obviously becoming a major player as an internet service provider. And Glenn said, it's good to win some battles. But I thought the whole thing was super interesting. And like all of these things did end up coming to fruition. But Doug, I'm wondering, like, do you remember these ads from when they first came out? And like, it seems like they stayed with you. What really struck you about them?
I remember them vividly. I mean, so much so I remember some of the headlines. Have you ever gotten a phone call on your wrist? You will. Have you ever paid a toll without slowing down? You will. Have you ever watched a movie when you wanted, where you wanted? You will. I mean, if you think about all these, they, like most of them, I think there was an article in Wired or something like 20, 30 years after the campaign that showed how most of them actually panned out as an overall prediction. And I definitely remember the ad as one of the original ad people around digital. That to me just stood out as such an innovative, content-driven approach to doing marketing.
Yeah, it's beyond incredible. I've given a talk a few times about marketers can create the future, and I truly believe that. And this is like prime example, right? It's like,
I mean, that's one of the things I took away from it is like the power of prediction. And it's like, prove me wrong in the moment. And the aspirational way that they thought about it, I think is, demonstrating the future is such a powerful, it was like one of the big takeaways I had from this.
Yeah, me too. It also, I think, speaks to the simplicity of, consumer experience, product experience, and like pain points of like, hey, this thing is annoying. I bet you something will fix that, right? It's like someday you won't ever drive over a pothole again, or something like that. I'll be like, dude, please show me whatever that technology is. I don't care if it's made up. Just tell me someday the future is going to get better.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I think it's also interesting, sort of like, like it didn't work out for them in the sense that you still have to have good company fundamentals, and darn those product people for not creating it all.
But I mean, I do think like it shows like the importance of Bell Labs. And listen, I think AT&T has done a phenomenal job over the years of being a business and focusing on what they've done. At different times, they've had different strategies, be it the content-driven approach that they had or the tech and labs approach or where they are now. So they're so big in so many ways that I wouldn't deem them not successful. They just have had a different role in bringing this technology to bear. You could say that they're the conduit. They might not be the software, the hardware, but they're the enabler. Without AT&T, there's no way we'd be having this conversation right now, doing a few of the things that they predicted in that campaign.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to say, which is you could still run the same ads right now. That's what's crazy. Is like, and it would be a pure brand play ad for AT&T, right? Is like, that's what's so interesting is like looking back at that time, it's still good branding for AT&T because as it opens the question for the viewer, which is, well, how is AT&T involved? And that is fascinating. That is the point of an ad, right? Is to get you to think about it. And it's like, when you see the Formula One car and you see Rokt on there and you think, how are those two things connected, right? Why? What is the reason why these two things are connected? And I think that that's like what these ads are most of all for me is, they didn't make all the technologies, like that part of the business, but like AT&T as a brand is, as recognizable as, as any in America. And for that reason, right, it's like that part of the campaign is a huge success. But most importantly, you still think about it to this day, right? That is the most important thing.
For me, 4 things really stood out. The first I talked about, which is that notion of predicting and anticipating the future. And I think as a marketer, part of my job is to help both internally and externally audiences understand the future and be ready for it. And so I think a key component of this campaign is that ability to predict and have a point of view, right? The second thing that really stood out for me is this intrigue, right? And Meredith, you were talking about how you really engage the audience. This was on a lean back medium, but a very leaned in kind of campaign. And ultimately, which gets to number 3, and I think about it all the time, have a strong close. I think these commercials and these messages closed an ad as good as any I've ever seen. And to me, this felt less like ads and more like little pieces of content. I think that's the other thing they did is a 30-second commercial would be 3 of them in a row. And so they get frequency or 2 of them. I forget if there are 30, 10 seconds or 15 seconds. So they get 2 or 3 of these in what was a standard spot length. And so you got frequency as part of that as well, which is just brilliant.
So much of marketing should be about brevity. They say brevity is the soul of wit. Should be about shortening instead of lengthening. And I think that's part of the reason these are so freaking punchy. It's just so quick, right?
Well, my challenge to you, though, is I think so many ads in our current digital and time-strained environments have meant that like we're celebrating 6-second ads more and more and more, and 3-second and 1-second ads. But I think they're lacking. They're trying to tell a story in that time. They're not trying to build a story.
100%.
And that goes back to what I set up at the beginning. There's a beginning, middle, and end to the 10-second story. And I don't care if it's 1 second, 5 seconds, or 20 seconds, or 20 minutes. Good pieces of content, branded content, need a beginning, middle, and end. And I think that's what this campaign has. And I'd say 90% of campaigns don't have that.
Yeah. if they ran the same ad over and over and over again, just about what became Easy Pass, right? That you don't even need to stop. Then in your mind, you would think AT&T has a solution to solve, toll booths, right? Whereas when they tell 20 different stories spread out over all of these different disciplines, it builds the picture in your mind that much more that AT&T is creating things to make your life easier. They're tackling the hardest problems that are out there. Maybe not the hardest, but the most annoying ones for sure.
And what was great about this, which I think is a key component of story building, is data. Meredith, to your point, the fact that research was the foundation to which then the stories came to life. I think a lot of times building a story is about having that data and doing something with it in a really interesting way. And be it identity data, or in this case, like product, insights, and being okay that we don't know how to solve it, but we're going to craft a story about our role, even though we're in the process of solving it. That's bold.
Super bold.
I have a question. How important is it that your product delivers on its promise for the marketer? Because it's like, if this was all a gamble, that all of these things would come to fruition, and the marketers had to do their job anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, how important is it for marketers to really believe in their product?
One, I think it's important for all marketers to believe in your product. If you don't, then I think you're going to be missing the passion and zest that is necessary to be a good marketer. If you don't, how do you find the magic? To me, the magic is what makes marketing great. And if you don't have that energy and you don't believe in what you're selling, that magic isn't going to exist. So I think first, that's like overall. To me, it was never that AT&T was going to build these products, is that AT&T was going to be part of how these products come together. That's what I always took away. By asking it and then saying, only you will, I felt that AT&T was the enabler, which if you look again today, that is who they are. They are an enabler to every single one of those you will messages that came true. And the ones that didn't come true, I think are because there's far better technology than I think anyone could have imagined at the time.
Yeah, there's a great sales lesson that I learned early in my career, which is, as a salesperson, you have to believe in your product. And you have to go into every meeting thinking, I wish I could charge you double. Like, the bosses won't let me, but this thing is so full of value. Like, you're going to be over the moon a year from now. The renewal is going to come in. I'm not going to have to even email you. Like, you're going to be emailing me, when do we get to renew? Because this is the best thing ever. And I wish I could charge you double, but the bosses say that this is the price. And like, that really reframed my thinking as a marketer later in my career, because you have to be able to think about your offering in that way. Like, you have to be really excited about it, Doug, to your point. Like, you have to be able to say, at its current spot right now, where we sit, what you can spend your money on right now is amazing. But we're also the type of company that we're working on crazy shit behind the scenes. Like, we got in the lab right now, we're working on stuff that will blow your freaking mind. And that's what our company is about. Right now, we're great. But also, we're cranking on stuff that like our competitors couldn't even dream about, is going to be so amazing. And that's like what the You Will campaign to me is. It's that second part. That's the brand building part. Because like this type of campaign, you're not creating demand, right? Like, you're not saying like, there's no product even being mentioned here, right? It's just saying it's to keep you top of mind. It's to keep the audience to say like, dang, I wonder what they're working on. So when that salesperson hits you up and is like, yo, AT&T's got this great product, like, I think it would be great for you. You go, oh, yeah, I've been seeing your ads. You're around. What are you working on? And like, that's what I think is so important, is like the utility of the ad in this particular case is not to outkick your coverage. It's not to say, oh, we're building that next year. It's just to say, this is the type of company we are.
Yeah, I totally. I mean, they have a strong point of view. And I think, again, that's such an important factor in today's marketing landscape is just to know who you are and more importantly, know who you're not. And if you're going to make a moment, really make it stand out and really trust yourself, be that difference or have a point of view that really stands out, which again, I think a lot of marketers struggle with because they're just trying to get that transactional message across, or they have a product benefit or a product feature. I think most marketing today is about inward out versus outward in. And, it's unfortunately, I've got a product feature and I'm trying to push it to you. And that's storytelling. Telling is taking what I want and thrusting it upon you. Story building is let's work together and figure out over time how this really comes to life.
Yeah. How do you do that? How do you craft that?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, and most people would say it's important, data. You need to know who your audience is. You need to know what your audience cares about. And I think you also need to know what your audience has against you. I always believe thinking about a foil is really important. Who's the enemy? So my teams hear me all the time talk about what's the enemy? Who are we trying to kill? Who are we trying to overtake? And it might be the enemy is not necessarily a company or a person. It could be an idea, a barrier, and an objection, a gap. Those are all enemies. And I think any good marketing message needs to address the enemy. And that often isn't thought about because you might not have a clear understanding of what that is. So for me, I think starting with that is really important. From there, I think you need to know who your brand is and who it's not. So we've been spending a lot of time since I joined Rokt on really understanding what is our brand, not only our brand idea, but our brand personality. And I'm not talking about the assets of colors and logos and we use photography this way or that way. Those are all easy stuff. I'm talking about underneath it. We want to know who we are as a brand. That comes out not just in our marketing, but our salespeople, our events, our content, everything you feel, hear, and see from Rokt ladders into this. It's part of our culture. We have, some amazing values that are all about raising the bar and pushing us into new frontiers. And so, as I think about the personality of the brand, it needs to match the culture, the values, the people, the tech. I think one of the benefits we have is we're a category creator. In some ways, what we do hasn't been done to the scale of which we've done it in the e-commerce space. And so we take great pride in that, but we also take great understanding that there's challenges and limitations in being a category creator. There's also, worries and that we, need to understand the competitive landscape is now amping up as we continue to demonstrate that this is a category of value and opportunity.
Anything else on the ads, the campaign, on You Will?
If you haven't seen it, it's a masterclass in content marketing today. I really do believe anyone that believes in content marketing has to go back and say, oh my God, this was 30 years ago. And look how much, to your point, Ian, this holds true today. This could be a campaign today.
Well, so that was going to be my next question, which is, let's just say you're the CMO of AT&T for the last 30 years. We always, for some reason, cut the best campaigns, right? And then sometimes you see them come back, they get reborn. My buddy works in U.S. Army marketing, and they brought back some old Army slogans because those were super popular. And it's so funny because everybody was like, yeah, these are great. Bring it back, right? They long disposed of Army of One because that never made sense. Be all you can be, right? And there's so much power in brand building when you build something like this. Why the heck would you kill it?
I don't, I know the CMO of AT&T and having advised and worked with many CMOs over the years, I think it's not why they kill it. It's what changed in the business that made them move away from it. And so I think there's probably one of the factors that made them move away was the selling out at Bell Labs. Another thing might have been some of the deregulation that was going on at the time. And there are very few businesses that don't change every 2 to 5 years. Like, I think if we look at AT&T now, they're back in the space where they could probably bring a campaign like that to bear. And they have been, if you think about some of the enable type of programs that they're doing. The fact is, though, like, businesses shift. And so the marketing tends to shift too. The other factor that just comes fundamentally is, the role of a CMO is not a, role that people hold for a long time. There's a lot of movement in that role. And so when a new CMO comes in, they want to make their mark. And one of the best ways of making their mark is bringing a new campaign to bear.
I think it's interesting looking at some of the most successful ad campaigns that are still going or things that are brought back. Nike Just Do It, for example. And some of those are more slogan-y.
Priceless, Marines, The Few, The Proud. Yeah.
And it becomes your brand, right? It's like synonymous with your brand. And it's just interesting to see something that was, now granted, they didn't know 30 years ago it was all going to come right. Like that was the hypothesis. So it makes it a lot easier 30 years later to go, see, but, predicting the future is actually hard despite their win rate. But, I don't know. Just one of those questions I think always sort of grates at me is like, we did an episode early on for the show of the most interesting man in the world. It's like, why would you ever kill that ad? It's so good, endlessly good. It's a series that you could have infinite chapters of. Never got old, never got stale. Everyone loved it. One of the most beloved things. Those videos do absolute numbers on YouTube. And yet why? Like, why would you do that? Anyways, you've seen a lot of those type of campaigns in your career. So I'm just curious, like, why kill the stuff that's popular?
Well, sometimes popular doesn't sell. That's the other thing. Just because it's a good campaign doesn't mean it's an effective campaign. And so I think one of the things we have to look at, and just knowing some of the campaigns that are out there right now, they're great pieces of content, but that doesn't mean they're effective pieces of content.
Yeah. And so that was going to be my next question, which is, this is a great ad, incredible campaign. But in theory, if someone wanted to do a campaign like this, a forward-looking campaign, when to do something like this versus when to talk about right now, when to talk about features and benefits, when to talk about, what to buy right this second.
Yeah, I think in today's omni-channel environment, we have the ability to do all three. I think that the challenge, though, is people tend to think about 1, 2, or 3. 1 being a very brand and aspirational, 2 being a very product, and 3 being a very sales and kind of performance marketing. So what's been really interesting that I've been thinking about over the last decade or so is how I think good marketers need to operate across multiple signals, right? So you have the mega signal, which is kind of your wave of peaks and valleys across high troughs, right? And then you have your performance, which is like much more fast-paced frequency. What I think people are forgetting is how to bring these waves together and also think about what's in between. So you have, a big winding, once a quarter, once a year kind of brand message. And you have this everyday, always on performance. But there's activity that's in between, be it product messaging, engagement campaigns, hospitality events, content marketing really has built out connecting brand marketing and I'll say performance marketing together. So to me, like, you need at least these 3 frequencies. And there's probably 4 or 5 other ones that you can think about that kind of intersect all of the signal lengths and kind of sounds of your campaign, if you were to think about it in that way.
Yeah, I just really like the idea of your large-scale brand campaign, or one of your large-scale brand campaigns, instead of answering questions, asking questions. Like, I just love that positioning. It's truly a great differentiator from a lot of the market that is trying to answer everything, and being the person who's posing questions, I think, is a powerful place to be.
One of the things I tell my team all the time is like, it's our job as marketers to answer questions, but sometimes you have to question the answers too.
Yeah.
And do we do enough of the latter? We can't just sit there and, okay, we know what the enemy is, so we're going to answer whatever that objection is in a very, traditional mindset. How do we flip that? And again, I think that's one of the things that drew me to Rokt. It's a company that's, creating new frontiers and really pushing to raise the bar, trying to change the world of e-commerce. And so being in an environment like that means our marketing, our activity can really stand out.
So Rokt has 2,500 plus of the world's leading e-commerce brands and advertisers, a massively successful company already. How do you think about your marketing strategy?
Yeah, I mean, carefully. We're in the midst of, I think, making a couple of major changes to it. So one of the big things I saw, and I think, we see a lot of this across the board, I don't think it's Rokt, is the marketing strategy was for where we were versus where we're going in some ways. So we were doing a lot of lead development, lead gen, sales development. We had SDRs, but we're getting to a place where, the type of companies we're trying to bring on board are some of the largest, some of the most significant retailers and e-commerce platforms out there. And so, taking a more performance marketing approach versus more of an account-based marketing approach has been a big shift that we've been looking at. What that means is, we might need different types of people then, both in marketing and in sales across our GTM organization, to really think about how we really meet that moment and think about, the right way of bringing it to life. So that's been something we've been going through. As a result, it means we have a lot more campaign activity. So I think in the past, we would have very few campaigns. We did a lot of events and hospitality, but now we're thinking about marketing more in a way that not just meets the moment, but makes the moment. And that's really important for us because we're trying to demonstrate to our prospects and clients the value of what we call the transaction moment. It's when people are, they've selected a product through the cart, the payment, the checkout, the thank you, and the confirmation. All of that is a moment that is highly valuable from a retailer standpoint, an e-commerce perspective, but also for the consumer, because each of us as shoppers online, we want to make sure that it's relevant, that we're delighting, that we're delighted as customers. And for us at Rokt, we talk about delighting customers in that moment through really making that transaction moment as relevant and as exciting as possible.
And then what about content? Where does that fit in?
Yeah, I mean, we're very bullish on it. We just hired a head of content. I mean, we've been doing a lot in content, but we're leaning more into it. One of the things I'm really excited about is, one of the best pieces of content we have is our employees and the power that they have. We have 600 passionate and very articulate individuals because all of us are bar raisers in our own right, and all of us are rock stars, which is what we like to call it. So one of the things we're doing is empowering our rock stars to be rock influencers, right? And really unleash them and unlock them to be out in the world, mostly on LinkedIn, maybe a few other social channels. But the power of that, I think, is untapped in a lot of organizations. So we're building a bit around the power of our employees.
100%. We recently launched this exec thought leadership video sort of offering or solution, whatever, to basically help CEOs and CXOs and people like that, create more video content for LinkedIn. And part of the problem is it's just so hard to create in general. But then it's also you need an editor, you just need a little bit of help. It's not just enough to sort of get your thoughts out there. You have to have it, be crafted a little bit or a lot of it sometimes. And I think that's the hard part. That's what gets people to not post, right? Is they just sit there and draft and they're like, I don't want to do it, or they just don't even ever try because they don't make room or they don't have time on the calendar or any of those things. But when people post, like, your peers pay attention. Like, oh, hey, this person, posted about XYZ and it's like really interesting. I didn't know that they were doing that. Like, oh, is that what Jim's up to these days? Oh, Shelly's, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that they were using XYZ. And it's super powerful. And we really look to our peers more than ever with all the noise.
Yeah. I've been spending a lot of time talking because, everything we do at Rokt is all about driving greater customer relevance. And if we can drive that relevance in the transaction moment, it creates value for our e-commerce partner. It creates value for the advertisers that are taking advantage of that moment. But most importantly, it creates value for the customer. And so what I think is really important in that is to realize we're an enabler, we're a connector. And if we think about the role of relevance, it's different than personalization. And one of the ways I think about it is, for the last 30 years, we've been all going around saying our job is to get the right ad to the right person at the right time. And I've come to realize since joining Rokt that right is wrong. And it's not that it's wrong. It's just, why are we still looking at 30-year-old approaches versus saying, can we be better than that? How do we go beyond personalization? And so relevance to us is the next step. It's not about not being personalized, but instead of being the right ad to the right person at the right time, how do you be the best ad for, not to, but for the best person at the best time? And what that means is you start making choices that maybe I don't give Ian an ad now, but I do give Meredith one. Or sometimes actually the best ad is the ad not shown. And that in and of itself is a paradox, perhaps, but it's that paradox that we are unpacking to understand that sometimes more is less and less is more.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. How do you create content sort of like for those things, right? Those are sort of simple concepts that are extremely complex and need a lot of unpacking.
Yeah, I mean, we're going through it right now. So I think you need a lot of different modes of content, formats of content. I think, for what we're doing, we're looking at brand content, product content, and I'll say sales content. And then we're looking at it across different formats. And that's also because the audience might consume the content. Somebody might love a podcast. Somebody might love reading an article. And so having that all built out is going to be really important. So we're kind of framing that out right now. A key component to this is not just the marketing, but the internal enablement. So once we have the content, how do we then train our go-to-market team on here's the content, here's how we're taking advantage, here's how we're going to market? Because again, they're having sales meetings and client meetings. And these are moments where our message and the way we articulate the product features and benefits can really come to life in those moments. So one of the things that I'm really excited about that's part of my role is that sales enablement function, making sure that we're enabling our GTM kind of organization to really understand the messages we're bringing out.
Yeah. That shadow marketing, the customizing your own decks and all that stuff. Keep it to a minimum.
Well, but no, actually, if you do it right, I want to equip and enable. So like we've actually been rolling out tools that allows, people to customize key parts of the sales presentation based on the insights and the knowledge they have of the deal. The client is looking for this. So like, how do we build that in more, but then make sure that they're trained and feeling comfortable and confident, what we were saying before, to get into those situations.
Therein lies the joke of sort of like the reason why, all that, the shadow marketing or shadow IT or whatever, why it exists in the first place is like what you made didn't actually meet the need of the person right there. What you don't want them to do is take the important slides. I always think of the Arrested Development joke with Tobias, where he's like, I've been doing a lot of work at the water cooler. He's like, that Funke guy. He's like, he's great. Oh, have you heard of Funke? He's awesome. And they're like, he goes into the interview and is like, hey, what's your name? He goes, Tobias. It's like all the work that he did in the water cooler to get Funke out there, and it's all gone. But I do think that sort of stuff, like, is super important. That sort of like you said, those layered messagings of the 1, 2, 3, that all three of those that we've been spending a lot of time to educate the market on. It's like those come there in the pitch, and then that extra 20, 30% customization that the rep only know the answers, on the ground, can add that on.
That's such a key component to, in my mind, marketing. Obviously, like brand marketing, is often clear, but sales marketing is at times, how do you allow the BD and the client success teams to really feel that they're empowered and they're able to get out in front of any situation? And that's where I think just good content marketing comes into play.
All right. Any other thoughts on sort of like ROI of content or how you make content investments?
Yeah, I mean, we're spending a lot of time right now mapping out the influence and attribution. I think one of the challenges is when you shift away from a more lead gen SDR mentality, you also start to shift away from MQLs and other type of methods that, B2B marketers have typically relied on to attribute success. So we're not trying to boil the ocean, but we are thinking about the influence of marketing. And I think it comes down to, we're fortunate at Rokt where, as we unlock e-commerce, one of the key things we deliver is business outcomes. And so because we enable those business outcomes, it allows us to build the trust and the scale with our partners. So the attribution doesn't need to be as robust as I think others that aren't able to prove out the business model, the business success like we do for our customers.
Last question here. What is your best piece of advice for a CMO who's trying to figure out their content strategy?
You never know until you try. I think it's very easy to experiment in content. I think a lot of times people are paralyzed. They don't either know where to start. They don't know what's the first right message. It's very easy to put something out there. And I do it all the time on LinkedIn personally myself. I put in posts different things. I take different approaches to my even personal posting strategy. And I wouldn't know if I didn't do it. And so I think, taking the chance, especially in our digital format where if it doesn't work, you can easily optimize.
I totally agree with that. And I think like one of the mantras here at Caspian is like no traffic on the extra mile. And like, I think that my piece on that is also go the extra mile. Like if the You Will campaign was just one ad, like we talked about earlier, it would not have been as successful. But because they did all these different versions, doing multimedia and doing, print, I think, they did print, they did, obviously the first internet banner, and then they, did all these television spots, that it has the depth of a campaign that feels good. And I feel like a lot of times with content, people like experiment with the content, with a piece of content or type or whatever. Like we're going to experiment with like, TikTok. And it's like, if you do 4 TikTok videos, which by the way, probably don't because it might get banned, but like if you do 4, like you're not going to be successful. Like you got to show up every day for like a year and try to be like, is this working? And you have to have belief and conviction that this is the right move for you. And then sort of go all in.
You got to be committed to what you're doing, even if you're experimenting. And I feel like those who are successful realize the power of experimentation, but also realize the power of commitment.
Doug, it has been wonderful having you on the show. For our listeners, you can go to rokt.com, ROKT.com. If you're in e-commerce, if you're a retailer, go check them out. Amazing, amazing company. And they're building the future of e-commerce. And if you haven't checked it out yet, you will. Doug, any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, I mean, that was great. If you think about the power of the transaction moment, nothing is more stronger in reaching customers than when they're in the buying mindset and a credit card is out. And for us, that's where our e-commerce partners and our advertising partners see the greatest value.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Doug. Really appreciate it. What a great topic and a great campaign.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Meredith. And just go find your will. What will you will, right? Think about it in that way, and it'll be interesting to see. So we'll talk soon.
Just predict the future. It's not that tough. Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.